National Off-Road Bicycle Association, and it's the mountain bike governing body that covers all mountain bike events in the United States. It can bring a lot of, it brings people to your city, so it gets a lot of economic impact for hotels, restaurants, other things like that. It also brings a lot of publicity to your city, so it brings good, different types of publicity your city may not normally get. It gets mountain bike magazines, general cycling magazines. People visit for the first time and see that you have a great park system and decide that they're going to keep coming back and riding the trails, which will help overall yearly with your economic impact that mountain biking brings to your city. Just general good press for the city, and to show that especially Waco has a really neat city park. If you're driving through town, you would never notice that there's a great place for mountain biking, and now more people are aware that the city has this, and even people within the city get to see that and use it more often. And it brought a lot of the city itself, even the people who run the city, the mayor and the city council and the park board and all that, realized that mountain biking is a very beneficial activity to do in the park, and it's brought a lot of help and support from the city in terms of promoting additional events past that, and overall help maintaining the trails, better trail fundage to get more new trails built, and things like that. So there's been long-term impacts of hosting such an event here. Well, I think it's freed up more development within the park because there was more publicity of the fact that we were doing this big event and that the park itself could actually host an event. There's been a lot more further development of trails. We've added some new trails since then. We've refined trails that were there. We've created the new map of the park system, which has been really beneficial for people coming out of town to use the park more effectively, and just general. The city itself is more behind it, and general events that we put on past that, there's just a little bit easier to do. You call the city and they work with you a little bit easier on special event permits and various things like that. But the trail system itself has grown since the event, and it seems to have gotten better, more well marked, better maps, all that kind of stuff. One, you need to be able to park a certain number of people who are going to come. If you have 1,000 racers, then you have to expect to be able to park anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000 cars minimum. Easy access to the trail system. You don't want to have to travel 100 miles and then have to hike in 20 miles to get to the trail system. So having a very centralized, very easy to get to place to host the race is the major thing. Two, trails that are in good condition, so there's no potential liability issues with people getting hurt because of a tree halfway down on the trail and knock someone over, anything like that. So just a really solid network of trails that you can hold an actual race on. NORBA has guidelines for the actual race course. It has to be 60% single track and a certain percentage slightly wider, like double track. So there's different requirements you have to host the race anyway. Also challenging course. You're inviting the top pros in the United States to come, and so it needs to challenge them, and it needs to provide a good race for them to show what they're made of. It's pretty difficult, and especially to convince people that in the middle of Texas you have a place to actually hold a national level event. You're vying for competition with a lot of ski resorts and places that have a lot of money and a bunch of financial backing behind them, and that can host various types. Here in Waco specifically, we can only host a cross-country race, so we can't do downhill, we can't do four-cross. So the competition for cross-country is pretty fierce. They do 6 or 7 events a year, and so you have to submit your bid packet pretty early, and you have to be able to work with them and be fairly flexible to accept some of the stuff that they do and ask you to do. So it's just a kind of continual process of submitting the right bid packet, working with your city and with your Convention and Visitors Bureau to be able to make sure that the city is behind it and that the hotels in the area are behind it and able to provide the resources you need to provide. Mid-2003, we put together a bid packet, and that bid packet included a map of the race course we're going to use, a map consisting where parking would be, where all of the tech expos, so where all the teams would park their actual trailers would be, a map of the city itself so they could see that it's really easy to get to from I-35. They could get there. A list of all the hotels in the area and the number of rooms that they each have, a list of restaurants, stuff like that, a letter of support from the mayor, a letter of support from the director of Parks and Rec, a letter of support from the chief of police, because there's obviously some security and traffic issues you have to work around. It just kind of, there's a lot of stuff that goes in that bid packet, and then they do a site visit. So then they actually came here, and the city was very helpful in that. The Convention and Visitors Bureau set up a lunch for us, provided lunch, had a little kind of thing about the city, talked about the number of hotel rooms and how the hotel rooms would be able to work with the national organizers. And then we actually took them to the park and did a walkthrough of where we thought everything would be, where there would be the portalettes and various things like that you need to host an event this size, where parking was, how they were going to get from parking because it was off-site to the race venue. And then did a walkthrough of the course and showed them exactly where the race course was, and a step-by-step guide of how the maintenance over the next year was going to be implemented to create the race course that would be perfect for the event. So there's a lot of steps involved in it. We had around 1,000 racers, and I think spectators it's always kind of hard to judge. We don't charge anybody to get into the event. So it would have been easier if you charge somebody, you sell them a ticket, you can keep track of how many tickets you sell for them to get in, but we don't do that. So spectator-wise, it was pretty tough to tell, but it was a pretty large event. We had a lot of people in town, a lot of hotel rooms were sold, and it was just very busy. It was very neat. One, work really closely with whatever, if you're working with the city, work very closely with the city and make sure they're aware of what you're doing. That really can be helpful in the end. If there's special trash things you need, or help with various building of things, they can be very helpful. Make sure that your cover, the liability is kind of an issue. You need to make sure that you do a permitted event, because NORBA provides insurance for all the riders who sign up for your event, so then no one else can be, the city itself can't be held liable or anything like that. So make sure that you're covered on those bases, and make sure that that you take all the time you need to make sure that you're very well organized before the event, because then the people who come will have more fun. If everything is covered and they don't have to worry about anything, they just show up, they sign up, they race, awards are taken care of in a timely fashion, and they're all having fun, and they don't see that there's any people running around trying to organize stuff at the last minute. The event will work better, and people have more fun and be more likely to come back. It's really important because it's the one time that they can really shine, and you can show what your city has to offer. For the national that we did in 2004, every supporter, every sponsor that we had was local. We didn't have any national level supporters other than the national series sponsors who already sponsor the entire series. So we were able to provide prize money and for the entire event based entirely on local support. And the sponsors that we got for that race have carried through to a lot of the events that we've done in the past that event. So building a relationship with your local sponsors is extremely important, and kind of maintaining the relationship there will help you years down the road. We've seen growth in the women's sector in town in Waco, and we've seen growth. I mean, there's the beginners coming out, and more beginners are getting out and using the trails. I think that is probably the best event we do each year. It's not a race, it's just a way for women to get together and have a fun, stress-free, learn how to mountain bike weekend. And that one, I think, has had the most impact on anything we've ever done. It really works within the city for kind of the greater good. It's a small group trying to make everything a little bit better for everybody, and it seems to work. I think people recognize the fact that your events are doing good, and it allows us to do things. The national allowed us to do things we never thought we'd do. There's a lot of different impacts. I mean, from getting the maps done to the trail signs to all that kind of stuff, it adds up, makes the park itself a nicer place for everybody to use, not just mountain bikers, hikers, kids, equestrian, all that stuff. It makes a big difference, and how the whole park and how your area is perceived to everybody.